Hi, you're watching India Today Global with me, Ishita Mitra. And viewers, today we are meeting you with some bad news. The world is mourning the loss of former Indian Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh. Tributes have been pouring in. Global media has been reporting the incident. So, in this live, we're going to look at what is the legacy that Indian politician has left behind, how is this incident being seen in the global media, and what was the impact of this man on India's economic trajectory and, of course, foreign policy. A gentleman in the world of politics, an accidental prime minister who time and again proved that it was a good accident, a silent reformer, a visionary leader. This is how the world is remembering him as it mourns the loss of a great leader. Dr. Manmohan Singh passed away on the night of December 26, that is yesterday, at the age of 92. He was suffering from age-related medical conditions and he was brought to AIIMS at around 8 p.m. in the evening, and around 9:50 they declared his passing away. Now his death marks the end of an era because he was not just a politician but a key architect of modern India's foreign policy and economic rise. The Indian government has announced 7 days of mourning. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is leading the nation in those efforts, remembering Singh as one of India's most respected leaders. Now, before we take a look at his legacy, he's left a legacy that cannot be compared to any other Indian politician, But before we talk about that, let's take a look at how global media has been viewing and reporting the incident. And especially, it becomes all the more relevant if you recall the words of Dr. Manmohan Singh, who said that history will be kinder to me than the contemporary media. So, beginning with BBC, now BBC described Dr. Singh as the architect of key liberalizing economic reforms in India. Remember, it was under his guidance that economic reforms were ushered in the country during 1990s, and this is what set India on the path of a rapid economic rise. So, the article that BBC or the tribute that BBC has posted with respect to Dr. Manmohan Singh also credits him for his role in modernizing India's economy, which sets the country on a path to become one of the largest economies in the world. Then you have Reuters. Now, Reuters in its tribute called Singh a reluctant prime minister. Remember, this is something that we have seen all the while when he was alive as well. When he was working, he was the prime minister. He was seen as somebody, a technocrat brought into politics, because if you look at his career, he's been part of planning commission, he's been finance minister, and he's somebody who's worked in RBI. So he comes from a very economic background. So it was believed that he was forced into politics. But time and again, his political decisions and economic decisions proved that he was in the right place. So rightly, Reuters describes him as a reluctant prime minister who, despite his initial hesitations, emerged as one of India's most successful leaders. Now, as I said, this is so true because his leadership was marked by economic growth, which lifted millions out of poverty in India. Then you have the New York Times, which describes Singh as a soft-spoken and cerebral leader. Of course, this is something that also goes with this, when we talk about Manmohan Singh, he was somebody who's always come across as a very gentleman, as a very, kind-hearted person who did not get into this, rowdy, what we call like macho politicism. He did not get into that field at all. So the New York Times article describes him as a soft-spoken and cerebral leader who helped propel India to global economic prominence. Now, the article also points to a certain criticism of Singh's handling of domestic terrorism and corruption issues. See, his second term, especially under UPA, because he led the country from 2004 to 2014. But his second term under UPA was marked by a lot of allegations of corruption against his government. So the article points to that as well. And of course, the Mumbai terror attack also happened on his watch. And this is one of the criticisms that always has come for Congress and Manmohan Singh as well, is the way they reacted towards Pakistan after its role was found in the terror attack. Now, moving on, the Washington Post praised Singh's personal integrity and his significant role in strengthening India-US ties. Again, a very prominent role that Dr. Manmohan Singh played was in the civil nuclear deal with the US, between India and US. So this is something that he's been credited for. And the Washington Post also notes that how he was always seen as powerless within his own government. This was, of course, due to some prominent Congress leaders exercising more control over him. Now, if you go forward, Al Jazeera describes Singh as a mild-mannered technocrat. As I mentioned before, he was somebody who was an expert in economics, an expert in a field, and had entered politics from that. So it describes him as a leader of great personal integrity and a mild-mannered technocrat. It also highlights some of his major social economic initiatives, which were of course key to India's development during that period. So this is how global media has been reporting Dr. Manmohan Singh's passing away, and this is how they are paying tribute to the leader. Now let's take a closer look at the monumental contribution that Singh made in shaping India's global presence, because if you see the first decade of this century from 2004 to 2014, it was very critical for the way global world looks at India today. Where India stands today, the foundation of it was built in that period, of course in the 90s as well. But during that period, India gained rapidly on the global stage, whether it was economy or whether it was foreign policy. And the leader who was leading the country at that time was, of course, Dr. Manmohan Singh. So, as I said, India's journey as a rising global power began in the 1990s with two key decisions. The first was in 1991. This was the liberalization of the Indian economy. Of course, this is something that we often credit India's growth to. And you see, this was the move that Manmohan Singh, as a finance minister, is credited with spearheading. He's not only played a role in India's journey as a prime minister, but before that, even as a finance minister, he's played a major role in setting India on the path of global, and rapid economic growth. So this economic reform laid the foundation for India's emergence as an economic powerhouse, opening up markets and creating opportunities for foreign investments, basically aligning India's economic growth with the world. This is what the step did, and this is something that Manmohan Singh played a major role in. Now, another key decision which was taken during this time was the US-India Civil Nuclear Agreement. Now, Manmohan Singh, under his prime minister, when he was the prime minister of the country, he recognized the importance of maintaining India's nuclear legacy. But at the same time, he wanted to ensure that country was treated as a responsible nuclear power. So one of his major diplomatic victories that we count as was securing India's position within the Nuclear Supplies Group, or NSG. Now this had historically placed restrictions on countries that conducted nuclear tests. Imagine now you must, and if you know a little bit of history as well, you would know that when India conducted its nuclear test in Pokhran under Vajpayee, India came under a lot of international pressure for doing so, especially because Pakistan soon followed the step just a year later. So there was a lot of pressure on both the neighbors for conducting nuclear tests and how it would now shape its nuclear policy. So this is an agreement that placed India as one of the responsible nuclear power. And Dr. Manmohan Singh played a very crucial role in that. Now, you see Singh's efforts culminated in that landmark deal, US Civil Nuclear Agreement. This was signed in the year 2008, of course, during his first term as a Prime Minister. And this agreement allowed India to engage in civilian nuclear trade with the US and other countries. And this marked a significant step in India's diplomatic relations. It helped India open up to the world in a way that it had not done before. And this achievement, you see, wasn't easy on his part. Singh had to put his government's survival on the line, gambling that his party would survive a vote of confidence in parliament to just push through this historic deal. But his resolve and diplomatic skills were very crucial to making this a reality. And if you see, As I mentioned in the beginning of this video, that Jai Shankar when he paid tribute to him, he talked about the time that he worked very closely with him. Well, this was the time that both the leaders worked together. When this civil nuclear deal was in the process, the negotiations were going on, Jai Shankar worked very closely with Dr. Singh. Jai Shankar at that time was the Joint Secretary for Americas at the Ministry of External Affairs, and he played a vital role in negotiating that nuclear deal. So this is the time when both the leaders, worked together, and of course, Jai Shankar was talking about this time. And in September 2008, the Nuclear Supplies Group formally agreed to allow civil nuclear cooperation with India. And this marked a new chapter in India's diplomatic history, as I said before. You see, now Singh's foreign policy, when we talked about two incidents, but it was not just limited to these two victories. It was based on the principle of greater engagement, if you see, this is something that Prime Minister Modi has also been following. He's been, of course, going around and engaging India, and of course with global leaders, but this is something that began much earlier. As I mentioned, that Singh's policy was also based on a very similar principle. But this, of course, was something that marked a shift from its earlier policy of non-alignment, focusing instead, on building stronger ties with key global powers. And this included US, Russia, China, Pakistan. All of these countries were central to this strategy of Dr. Manmohan Singh. Now, Singh continued the work started by Vajpayee as well. As I mentioned, that during the 90s and during the early 2000s, both the leaders, Vajpayee and Manmohan Singh, both of them are not with us now. India has lost both the leaders, but both of them played a pivotal role in laying the foundation for India's economic trajectory and for India's engagement with the global world. So, Singh also played a role, in trying to resolve differences with Pakistan. His government tried to reach out to Pakistan's leadership in an effort to build peace. But of course, the 2008 Mumbai terror attacks severely strained the ties between two neighbors, making it impossible to sustain the conversation. And this is something Singh has also been criticized for the way the aftermath of this attack, the way the situation was handled. So Singh focused a lot on building international pressure on Pakistan, isolating it globally, but there wasn't some tangible effect or something like what we have seen under Prime Minister Modi, something like a surgical strike or something, an action taken to punish Pakistan. That was not seen. So this was something that his government came under a lot of fire for. Now, when we talk about other countries and Singh's foreign policy, so with China as well, Singh sought a delicate balance. He tried to, make strides. He made some strides in maintaining peace along the LAC. But, despite there were a lot of challenges as well, we talked about border issues. Those came up during 2013. The issues came up. But despite that, his engagement with China was marked by diplomacy and efforts to prevent more conflict. Now, under his leadership, India also strengthened ties with Russia, an all-weather ally of India, and also with Japan. With Japan, the ties were elevated to a strategic partnership, and this was under Dr. Manmohan Singh. When we talk about India's neighborhood, so under Manmohan Singh, he expanded India's Look East policy, which of course later evolved to India's Act East policy under Prime Minister Modi, focusing on deepening ties with Southeast Asia. But you see, his tenure wasn't just about relationships with big powers. He also made significant inroads with African nations and Latin American countries, something we've also seen Modi has been building on, areas that have become now increasingly important for India's global strategy. And these efforts that former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh took to help and engage with this part of the world, it helped India emerge as a voice of global South, advocating for the interests of the developing nations. Now, Manmohan Singh's passing definitely marks the end of a chapter in India's history, because this has laid the foundation of how the world views India as and how its economic rise has been. So definitely, this incident for India, for the world as well, is an end of an era, and his legacy will live on we will continue to learn through the lessons that he's given us on and reflect on the legacy that he's left behind. His quite thoughtful leadership, whether it was economics or diplomacy, has of course shaped India as we know it today. And this is something that we're going to remember him for definitely. So as the country mourns his loss, we would remember his contributions to India's rise on the global stage and look at these developments. The last rite of the late Prime Minister are going to be held on Saturday. This is what we know, the latest, although the government is going to conduct, I think as we speak, there is a cabinet meeting going on which is being led by Indian Prime Minister, and we'll get more details of how the decision will be taken with regards to the last rites. But as of now, what we know is that they're going to be held on Saturday. And thank you so much, viewers, for watching this video with us. Stay tuned to India Today Global, where we simplify geopolitics for you.